I'm Noel,
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Cole.
and we're living overseas on a dime.
That's our channel name.
Thanks.
So yeah.
Hi there, welcome to Living Overseas on a Dime. Today we're going to talk a bit about retiring overseas, living overseas. I know the title is How to Retire Overseas, but we're also going to talk about living overseas in general. That can be for someone who wants to just become an expat, someone who's financially independent, digital nomads, and anyone who has interest on living overseas on the cheap. So I think the most important component of this is that it's very much about doing it but not living on a huge lifestyle. Now for us that's going to be largely below $2,000 US a month. And that'll be kind of our guideline as we approach these countries. So as saying that, to give you an idea as to some of the countries that we will be discussing in the future, because my plan is to deep dive into each of the countries that could potentially be of interest. Now, what does a deep dive mean here? Well, I find a lot of the videos and the literature that you find online about retiring overseas and living overseas really kind of sugarcoat it and focus largely on the positives without getting into any of the details of what's involved in moving and living overseas. And so with that in mind, first of all, we'll talk about money and how much it costs, say, to rent a place, how much the general cost of living is. And that will be more than just Numbeo. Like I know a lot of people like to look at Numbeo and say, oh, it costs this much. Oh, this costs this much. Well, that's useful. But at the same time, sometimes it gives a very skewed view of certain things. And ultimately it's crowdsourced. So it's, garbage in, garbage out. If the information's good, it's going to be good. And if the information's not so good, it's not so good. So, one of the things that we've done, for example, is spent a lot of time on websites in that country in relation to apartment rentals. Now, it's not perfect, and often you do have to navigate a foreign language website, but it is useful for giving yourself some ideas as to what different things cost, and then also what you get for your dollar there, because someone's idea of what a nice one bedroom is might be very different than your idea of what a nice one bedroom is, depending on what your expectations are of a living space. So money is a very big component of what we will discuss and what sort of expectations you should or shouldn't have in relation to what you'll get in that country. Next on the list is visas, because this is something a lot of people skip over and almost ignore in relation to living long-term in a place. And it's something that's very important to see. Okay, are you doing retirement? Do you have a small business? Are you a digital nomad? What sort of different options do you have in relation to a visa with living in that place? And an important part of all that leads us into our next point, which is taxes. Now, I'm not a tax expert. I've spent a lot of time reading about different tax treaties and the different options in relation to taxes, and a lot of the time it has to do with the 183-day rule, which if you exceed that, most countries will consider you a tax resident in relation to their country. So it's something very much to keep in mind, but at the same time, it's also something a lot of people don't discuss in relation to living somewhere. I know something I've been looking at recently is what sort of taxes do different countries have in relation to capital gains? Because if you have any of your money in a taxable investment account, something that's not sheltered, in Canada that's RSPs and tax-free savings account. In the United States that might be a 401k or a Roth IRA or something along those lines. It's really something to consider, because if some countries have very high tax rates depending on whether or not they treat it in a different manner than regular income, or does it get put in with regular income. If it is put in with regular income, what are the tax rates like in that country? So that's something to definitely consider, is the tax rate and what happens with your taxes in relation to where you live and where you are a tax resident. Finally is the living environment as a whole. This includes a lot of different things. The general kind of, for the hippies, the vibe of the place. Is it relaxed? Is it a very modern, fast going sort of city? What is the general kind of feeling of living there? What is the culture? Is it accepting to foreigners? Is it not? If it's not, how do you cope with that? Is it accepting of people with alternative lifestyles? What sort of reception do people from different cultural backgrounds and ethnicities get in that country? Because this is something that definitely impacts living in a place long term. What is the food like? I know for some people they may instantly think, oh, is it really spicy? Can I get Western style food or whatever the food of my culture is there? Funny enough, something that we've been encountering lately is the food kind of bland? Like, is it tasty? Like, I know everyone has different tastes when it comes to food, but this is something we'll explore and try and not really make judgment calls on like this food's good or bad, because that's ultimately subjective. But I think most people could understand if you said Thai food can be spicy. And if you're not into spicy food, then Thailand may not be the country for you. I'm sure you can get other foods that aren't spicy, but for the most part, if you're not into spicy food, it's something you need to consider. Finally is like infrastructure. How modern is the country? Do they have a decent transportation system? Things along those lines. There are a lot of things to consider in living in a place. For me personally, the arts and music are very important. So there are a lot of different things to think about. So I hope that video was something that you can look forward to with our future videos and talking about different countries. I really look forward. This is my wheelhouse. I love talking about the concept of geo-arbitrage, the concept of living in different countries and maximizing the money that you have and the money that you've saved and even the money that you make. I think that exploring these different countries, it'll be fun for everybody, because it's something that I've loved doing as I've got more into exploring these countries, and I really look forward to sharing it with all of you. Take care and happy travels.